In October of 1962, the United States sent a reconnaissance plane over Cuba and took pictures of the Soviet Union mounting missiles in Cuba with nuclear warheads, presumably. It sent the whole nation into fear. 90 miles from our country, missiles. I remember very well. I was only 7 years old, but I remembered very, very well. Because I was at my grandmother's house, which was only a couple doors from church, and all the uncles and aunts would come there. And most of the time it was joyous, and they would talk and stories and all that. But not this October. It was solemn. And it got my attention, so I listened. And I listened intently, and then I became afraid. I was just full of fear. And when I'd go out in the playground or I'd go out in the yard and I would hear a jet engine, I didn't know if it was a jet or a missile. And I wasn't afraid to die. I was afraid of losing my mom and my dad and my brothers and sisters and my friends, and I would freeze and shake with fear. You're the first ones I've ever told that to. It was a different kind of fear, and I didn't want to see it happen. And by the way, in 1962, airplanes with passengers had propellers. Doesn't that make me feel old? So those jets weren't that frequent like they are now. President John F. Kennedy sent a blockade to Cuba, and the Navy went there. And they found a Soviet submarine deep in the water near Cuba. And they tried to scare them up with depth charges, these explosions that would shake the submarine, and then maybe they'd come up. But those in the submarine had no idea what was going on up there. They thought the war had started. Everybody talked about the war with the Soviet Union and the United States, and they thought it started. The captain of the submarine ordered his men to get ready to fire torpedoes at the American fleet. And those up above on the water didn't know that those torpedoes were loaded with nuclear warheads. But the Soviet Union had a policy. 3 people had to approve the use of that weapon. The captain said yes. Another lieutenant said yes. But a third one said no. And historians tell us that had they fired those torpedoes and started that nuclear explosion, that there would be retaliation back and forth from the United States, hundreds, if not thousands, of atomic bombs and missiles landing here. None of you would have been alive, me included. This building would have been flattened. Scary, isn't it? One man got us all here, hopefully by the grace of God. And I hear this gospel and I think, is Jesus trying to scare us? Is that what he's trying to do? Scare us to church? I don't think so. He's just trying to get us to get ready, to be ready for the end of times if it happens, for his second coming. In 1962, I wonder how many of those that were going to work, going to school, going to the grocery store, going to the bank, were ready. Probably more than now. But you wonder. So, we go through this world, and we don't think about the death too much. Usually when somebody dies, a friend or somebody. But we have to get ready for the end, whether it be the end of time, Jesus says coming, it will come, or some other crazy thing like 1962. And by the way, 1983, look it up, it's even more scary. We almost all died then too. It's the world we live in, but we have to be ready for our own demise. So how do we go from fear to hope? That's the question. Most of us aren't afraid of dying in the sense, I'm not afraid. You know what I'm afraid of? my son and my wife and who's going to take care of them and what is going to happen and all that. Most of the time we're feared not for ourselves but for others, just like when I was a kid. That's usually what we're afraid of, but we still need to get ready for ourselves. So how do we do that? Now, I want to picture you all to picture that you have a bucket. All right? You're given a bucket. That's your soul. Long time ago, you had this bucket, and you start putting things in it. You put your love of Jesus in it. You put your love of your family in it. You put all the great things like the charity you do and all the things that Jesus taught it. You're coming to church and receiving him in the Eucharist and your intimate relation. It's all in the bucket. We throw some other things in there as well. We throw things like pride. Would it be great if we could take that out of our bucket maybe and live a humble life, put something in? Pride. That's just one example. But I thought about it. What else do we fear? And what else do we throw in there? And I think sometimes we throw guilt in there. I think we throw guilt in there that, I should have done this. If I would have done this, if I would have raised my kids this way, this would have been better, or this would have been everything that we think of. And we carry these guilt things with us. You know, if we have guilt, we're not trusting God to take care of everything. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. It don't belong in you. The other thing we throw in our bucket quite often is anger. And we do that ever so often. And I'm talking a different kind of anger. The anger that we have, let's say, recently, a hot topic would be the government. We get angry at the government. Some people get angry at the church. They don't like what they see. And some people get angry at God. Why would they get angry at God? Because they don't understand most of the time. You know, I know this person that lost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars gambling and doesn't go to church anymore because God didn't bail her out. I know people that are angry because they get some sort of cancer or disease. They quit going to church. I know people that have lost their spouse. God bless them, but why are you angry at God? I can tell you that when I look at life, and we have a span of life, and you hear this term so much, someone is called home. God called them home. Well, I'm going to tell you this. It's what I believe is God doesn't call you home before you die. He calls you home after you die. That's when he's calling you home. I remember years ago, these high school students were going to an event, and a drunk driver crossed the center line and killed all 4 people, high school kids in there. And I remember seeing an interview, and they were talking about God calling them home. I think, no, he didn't. The drunk driver killed them. I didn't kill them. And we blame things like diseases and all that stuff. We've expanded life so long, and we've tried to make life easier for all of us that we have all these microwaves that go through the air. And you know, every time you pick up a cell phone, it's got to find a tower. Electric, magnetic, radiation. That's what goes through your phone, by your head. Long term, who knows? We put chemicals in our food, in our water, in our air. And recently, these scientists have discovered that pieces of plastic are ending up in our brain. We're going to blame God for that? He doesn't call us home. He calls us afterwards. And that's what we need to focus on. As Father said, these couple of weeks, we start Advent in a couple of weeks, and you're going to hear the same gospel only by Luke. So it's a good time to stop and reflect about what's in your bucket. What's there? What can you take out? And if you can put some more good in, put good in. But take it out. Take out the guilt. Take out the pride. Take out the anger. What do you got left? You're taking out the fear. There's no fear anymore. When that's left in your soul, it's nothing but but what Jesus wants us to have in there. So take some time. Look at it. You never know. You just don't know when it's our time. And it could be bad. But don't be afraid. Just work on it. Just work on your soul.